Underwriting deals is such a major pain point for people. Most don't want to do it, and the people that are good at it are few and far between. That is why after 6 years of being in the industry and buying over 1,200 apartments, using my best-selling multifamily deal analyzer, I created Real Estate Lab, a full suite acquisition software for multifamily investors. We have built a product that helps investors automate their acquisitions and close more deals, all in a cloud-based platform. You can go to realestatelab.com and sign up today using the promo code TAG2 for 10% off your first 12 months. This is David Tupin. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to The Apartment Gurus, where twice a week, host Tate Siemer brings you deep dive interviews with the wisest gurus in the apartment investing industry. These experts are sure to create game-changing value and inspiration designed to catapult your business to the next level. Be sure to reach out to Tate at www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. And now, here is Tate Siemer and the Apartment Gurus.
Welcome, everybody, back. Another episode of the Apartment Gurus podcast is coming at you right now. And do we have a guru for you today? The one and only BK, Billy Keels, is in the house. Billy, it's a joy, and I'm excited, and you can tell. You and I have gotten to share some time together here recently, and really connected. And you've got a fantastic story and a fantastic path in real estate. I'm really excited to share that with the listeners and let them get a taste for your personality and your drive and your commitment and everything else. So welcome to the show, Billy. Really, really glad to have you.
Hey, Tate, man. Thank you so very much. I appreciate the warm introduction, and it just put a smile on my face. Like, I don't know. I think you're the very first person who's ever called me an apartment guru. So I'm kind of like, whoa, I don't even know how to react to that, man. It's like a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Well, the deal is we named the podcast the Apartment Gurus, and I certainly don't. I'm not a self-proclaimed guru at all. Although I will say I'm a guru in the making. I like to think someday I'll achieve that status. But the gurus part really comes from the guests that we have on, and also the listeners. I think that we're all gurus in the making, especially if we're doing something that we love and we're passionate about and we are heavily engaged in. I think that I see us all as gurus. So, but you especially, Billy, you've got a couple decades of experience in the business world. I know you've been living in Europe for 22, 23 years?
Yeah, almost 22 years, man. Just finished my 21st year, so I'm actually in my 22nd year of Europe. It's supposed to be a 1-year sabbatical, by the way. I got a little bit lost along the way.
Well, you got busy. You got you entered into a great W-2 situation out there. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. You know what? And before I even jump into that, there's just one thing that I do want to mention. Hopefully you're okay with me as a guest, but listen, everybody, that if you're watching, you're listening, I know that Tate puts a lot of time and energy into this podcast. And so if you have not had a chance to leave him an honest written review as well as a rating, take just a couple of seconds to do that. And the reason that's important is because that's a way that he also gets to get amazing guests to help you get the things that you need. So if you haven't taken a second, just literally leave him an honest written review as well as a rating. It goes a long way. So I know that I know I'm a guest, but I like to ask that as a fellow podcaster as well. I know it's really, really important. So, Tate, one of the things that, you were kind of asking the corporate world, and yes, I did spend 26 years in the corporate world. I've been very, very fortunate. I've had a chance to work and travel throughout some 86 different countries. The last 21 years, I've been working in the IT space. I started in hardware, where I was working in the south of France. I also started a sales organization in Italy, or as part of a team that started up the sales organization is probably a better way to state that. And then I ended up going back to France, in the south of France, and then I moved to Spain And the reason I moved to Spain, which was where I live today, I reside in Spain, because my wife, who is from Spain, she and I met in France. When I left the hardware side of IT, I moved into the software side of IT, where I was working in enterprise software, sales and sales leadership. And I did that for basically the last 16 years. I spent time with one company. And I was very fortunate, aside from working and traveling throughout those 86 countries. The largest business that I managed was about $100 million business across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Mm-hmm. And in spite of that, I really liked the corporate role. I had a really, really great time. I probably made a lot more money than I should have, but when you're working in software sales, that's kind of what happens, especially if you are a productive person. And even in spite of doing that and being in a role that I liked, the one that I got recognition and was highly paid, I still knew that there was something else that I wanted to be able to do, because not coming from a family with a lot of money, or actually watched my parents struggle pretty much growing up, that they worked 2 different jobs and they really struggled financially. Mm-hmm. But I realized that even though I was working in this corporate role that was really great, I needed to do something else, because I'd lost a lot of money in 2000. I'd been working for 4 years out of college. Which I went to college on the other side of the state where you went from, which was also one of the other cool reasons that we're able to connect, which is awesome. Yep. And then in 2008, I lost about 33% of the value of my portfolio. And that was kind of like, I had to do something else. And so I spent the last decade of that 26 years in the corporate world. That last decade, I was also investing in a number of different hard assets. And so I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, that's kind of how I got to Europe and got into the corporate world.
Yeah. So for listeners, Billy and I share a home state of Ohio. As many of you know, I'm from Cincinnati and Billy's from Columbus, which is where we own 4 communities, Greenlight, my team. So I am in Columbus, at least a half dozen times a year, and I love the city. Love what's going on there economically, and we've talked about that on the show before, and it's worth mentioning. And Billy mentioned he went to school across state, which is Miami University, his alma mater. My alma mater is Ohio University, which is a couple hours away, and there's a bitter rivalry between those 2 schools. Interestingly.
Yes, there is, but I will say that you all have an amazing Halloween festivities, which is absolutely amazing, and you welcome everyone with open arms. So regardless of where you go to school, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, excited to dig into all of this with you, Billy. Many of the listeners are already going to know who you are from your podcast and your presence on in the thought leadership world and social media, et cetera. But for those of you that kind of don't, know your real estate story, kind of take us through when the real estate spark was lit, so to speak, and how that developed over time with your W-2.
Yeah, man. So, this is one of these things that whenever I go down memory lane, it's one of those things where I look back and I think about life, and I think to myself, wow, I was in this corporate role. I was a high performer. I was, they had a program called the Catalyst program, but it was like for top performers. I was going to Hawaii every couple of years because that's where the top achievers. I worked for a company that had about 110,000 employees. And the sales organization, which is where I spent most of my time, had these trips where they recognized the top achievers from around the globe, and I would go there pretty frequently. And like I mentioned before, I really liked my corporate career, but the thing that happened was along the way, I started recognizing that there were some things that just were they weren't. I wasn't being congruent, right? Because as I mentioned to you before, I grew up in a household where I watched my parents struggle a lot financially, and that gave me kind of 2 things. One, it allowed me to recognize that it takes hard work to be able to achieve and to move forward. It takes a lot of love. I received, for everything that I couldn't get financially, I received lots and lots and lots of love and attention from our parents, even though I come from a divorced household. But one of the things that also happened is I started recognizing hey, listen, as I was a young father, I wanted to be a father who was present, physically present is what I originally thought. I recognize that it's not just about being physically, but it's also about being mentally present as well, emotionally present. But early on, I didn't know, I never learned how to be financially responsible. I learned everything that my parents could teach me, right? Which was as much as they knew. But then as you start to recognize, hey, listen, there's a lot more that you can learn. Parents always helped me to be curious. And so I started going out and learning from other people. But as I was initially just investing, I was investing in my 401k, my IRA, and some mutual funds. And every once in a while, I bought a couple stocks. Well, when 2008 happened, I realized that I needed to start to do something else, Tate. And so I came across this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which a lot of people have probably seen. Thing is, I picked it up and I didn't finish it. I picked it up. I started reading this. It was really cool because it was one of the trips I was back with my girlfriend at the time, and we were back in the US. And I picked it up and it seemed like really, really cool. It was also on the back of losing 33% of my portfolio. And I thought, wow, cool. I'm going to get into this. But then I left the book back at my dad's place and ended up coming back to Europe. And a couple years later, I ended up picking it up. And I went and I really, really loved the thing that I was reading about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it seemed like there was a lot more control that I could have over real estate versus the stock market. I had absolutely no control, whether it was a qualified plan or it was the mutual funds or it was stocks that I was investing in. And so I recognized that I wanted to have more control, but I became like a theoretical mastermind or guru, right? I was this theoretical guru about investing. I knew all of the things. Like if you would have asked me, hey, listen, how do you get to your NOI? It was the revenues minus the operating expenses. I got to the NOI. And then if I had debt service, everything after that, I got to keep it. And I knew about different asset classes. But the problem was I wasn't taking any action, right? I just kept learning, but I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I just wanted to learn all this stuff and sound really smart. And people would ask me, okay, well, how's your portfolio? How's it performing? And I would just kind of go, well, if you need to get to your NOI, then you just have to take the revenue minus the operating expenses. And they were like, yeah, but your portfolio, how's it performing? Well, I just didn't have anything in my portfolio yet because I was waiting for the perfect deal. Well, all of that kept happening, Tate. And then something happened to me when my youngest son turned 3. And it was something I didn't used to talk about because I used to feel pretty ashamed about it because as a young father, I chose to go to a business meeting over sticking around for my son's 3rd birthday. And I say that because the night before his 3rd birthday, I was in this position where I didn't sleep very well. I was kind of nervous because I knew the next morning I was traveling, but I woke my wife and our young 1-year-old, as well as our 3-year-old up at about, I think it was like 5:45 or something like that, because I wanted to give my oldest son a hug and kiss before I left and sing him happy birthday. And that's what I did. But then when I got in the elevator and went to the airport, I just didn't feel well at all. And that same day, later on that evening, my wife and our 2 kids and my in-laws, they were all together singing happy birthday to my son and, having the cake and stuff like that while I was at this business meeting in Frankfurt. And so because of what happened to me and the way that I felt inside, that took me from like being this theoretical guru about all of the real estate that I wanted to buy to actually taking action, because I knew that I never wanted to feel the way that I felt that evening when all of my family was together and I was far away. That was the kind of the first thing. And that's what got me started actually investing in real estate. I then started writing down my goals. I started taking action. A lot of times I was taking action on imperfect information. I knew that I wanted to get into real estate. I looked because initially I thought, well, the books that I was reading, it pretty much told me to buy where I lived, or at least if it didn't directly say that, it was kind of indirectly saying that. And so I thought I was going to buy real estate here in Barcelona. Ended up that I did not do that. And I've only purchased assets, real assets back in the United States. And I did that for over a decade, and I continue to do that either myself and doing that with other people. That was one thing. And then there was another incident that happened later on, which was actually last year. And as I was leaving the corporate life, my dad got really ill. And when my dad got ill, I realized like, hey, listen, I've been doing this work for a decade, adding assets to my portfolio, generating income, generating tax benefits, both active and passive. And I realized that I liked the job that I was doing, Tate, but I didn't love it. Right. I was in a point where I was with my dad, and he was like in the ICU, and he was there for a while. And I just kind of looked around and I was like, wow, all these machines are kind of keeping my dad alive. Like it was a reminder that life is very finite. And although my dad's doing much better today, it was a reminder to me like, hey, listen, like do the things that you really love to do, because none of us are promised tomorrow. And because I'd done a lot of work, I saw how my parents worked, and I was in a position where like probably the last 3 years, my 9 to 5 was pretty much optional. I was going in because I wanted to, not because I needed to, because the things that I was investing in for that previous 7 years and now a decade, they were working. And they were providing me and my family the runway to be able to live the lifestyle that we really wanted. So it was a matter of saying, hey, listen, corporate life, it's been really great. I've had a good time. I've got lots of accolades, made a lot of money. And now I need to go out and at least try this thing on my own and really look at serving other people, investing my time with my family that's here in Europe and also back in the States, right? And so it was these kind of different incidents that led me to get started investing in real estate and real assets. And then also, because I'd been doing it, I'd been making some mistakes, I've been also getting the benefit. I realized that after a decade, I was in a position to be able to make that 9 to 5 optional, to leave and now be doing the things that I'm doing today, is, not just myself investing, but also helping other people invest in real assets and understand how this world can really help you get to the lifestyle that you're looking to lead.
Yeah, love it.
Hopefully that wasn't too much.
No, that was perfect. There's so many great takeaways there. I love the story about your son and his 3rd birthday, and how those moments of where you get connected to what really matters to you, and where the meaning in your life really is. Like it sounds like it was just a tremendous moment of clarity for you, where you ran into a circumstance that you didn't like. You realized when you got on the elevator and were heading away from your family that this wasn't like where you wanted to be, and you had the education, the background, and the knowledge, the specialized knowledge that it takes to do this business of commercial investing. But it was almost like that moment kind of aligned your heart and your mind and your drive, and really brought things together for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that, like I said, in the beginning, I was kind of ashamed. I didn't really want to talk about that because it was kind of an embarrassing thing, or at least I felt it was. And once again, like, I come from a family where I watched my parents have to do certain things. Like they didn't have a choice. And so I understand the difference between really having a choice and not having a choice, because sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do. But when I look back at it, if I'm really honest with myself, I was in a corporate role and I started drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much. And I got off track and started really chasing the dollar and chasing the next title and chasing the next thing. And because I didn't already have my own runway prepared, like, if I think about that today, like, there's no way that I would have taken that trip, because I would have just taken a day off. Like, why did I not take a day off and just do something else? But because I was good at my job, I was getting the bonus checks, I was, looking to get the next title, that's what happened. And I went in that direction. But because I hadn't done any of the work to prepare my own runway, to prepare my own ability to say, you know what, tomorrow's my son's birthday. Don't want to go. Not going to go because this is more important. So I don't say that to say, hey, listen, it was just this thing. Because like I said, I grew up watching it. But I realized, and if I have to look at myself, I realized that I hadn't done the work. And so that was the moment that I realized, like, I had to take responsibility for myself, for my actions, and for the things that we wanted to do as a family, or at least the part that I was responsible for. So I really reflected on that moment, and it was something that helped me realize, how do I take even more responsibility for the things that happen, and both, being physically present and mentally and emotionally present for my family, for my loved ones, and being able to partly invest in assets that create the runway for me to be able to do that is one of the ways that at least I feel like I get that freedom, that freedom to choose, just like I made the freedom to not go back to the corporate world. So
yeah. How old's your son now, Billy?
He will be 13 pretty soon. So he's coming up.
That was 10 years.
Soon to be a teenager. Yeah.
So 10 years ago was when that happened. And so had you invested at all? Had you bought any real estate at that point? Zero. Okay.
Zero.
Okay. But you had,
but as I told you before, I knew all the formulas.
Yeah.
I knew all the podcasts. I'd listened to everything.
Yeah.
I knew who, and I knew every single formula possible, but I had not taken action.
Okay. Well, so Rich Dad, Poor Dad's so funny. It comes up when I ask people about their inspiration story, which is always fascinating to me, kind of when the light bulb goes off in your head and you kind of see the light on multifamily. Rich Dad Poor Dad comes up so often, probably 75% of the time. It's either the reason that people were introduced to this idea of cash flowing assets, or it was a big influence and part of the reason and part of the cause of their business. It's for listeners. If you haven't read it, it's foundational. It's a must read, in my opinion, and it's gonna really tune you into how wonderful it is to own cash flowing assets and how there's recession resistance in cash flowing assets and tax advantages and the ability to grow wealth and just so many advantages. And Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the book, just does a great job of capturing all that. So put that one on your reading list. So Billy, when did you leave W-2?
Yeah, so so it's been just about 9 months now, just going into the 10th month, that I have been outside of the corporate world and the corporate constructs, and at this point, Tate, I don't have any idea about ever going back. And like I said, I'm not anti-corporate. I think corporate, there's a lot of things you can learn. I had a really, really positive experience. I was just looking for something more, and like I said, I did it 26 years. So the time that I was there, learned a lot, saw the world. Like I said, I had a chance to work and travel throughout 86 countries. Living over in Europe the last 21 years, I've learned 4 additional languages. I've, managed businesses across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and it's been fantastic. It was a really, really positive experience for me. Not a perfect experience. I don't think the perfect experience exists, but for me, it was a positive one. I just wanted something more. It was time to look for and do something else.
Yeah, it's interesting. I often think about how there's really kind of 2 different wirings in human beings. Like you've got the employee mindset, if you will, the W-2 mindset, and then you've got the ownership mindset. And it sounds to me like you were just so exceptional at the W-2 stuff and your corporate world that you were a true guru in that space. And it sounds to me like you were just so good at it that you almost broke the mold of that like W-2 mentality. And 10 years ago, you busted into the ownership space in your real estate business. So was that a transition for you, that mindset piece?
Well, it's a great question, Tate. One of the things that I realized is when I was in the corporate world, I always worked in client-facing roles, right? I was always in a sales or sales leadership type of role. Yeah. So along the way, it was about understanding clients and what their problems were and how you could solve their problems externally. And then internally, it was about how do you lead teams? How did I create the environment? And I did it really, really bad early on, right? Because you never get to be good or even great unless you do things pretty poorly in the beginning. And I've gone through that whole evolution, right? But because I've always been very curious and I've always been open to criticism and I've always been open to like helping me find the right path, I was just curious and I continued to be curious. And I guess as a result of providing positive results, that was one of the reasons that I continued to move up in the corporate world. I actually got to a point where it got to be really uncomfortable for me, Tate, because the last decade, probably the last 6 years, I internally told multiple times that I didn't want to be in a promotion or a selection process for a new role because I found my space. Like I stopped moving up the corporate ladder because I knew that I was based the results that I was doing in the sales role, because eventually I went to a sales role because I started recognizing like keep moving up the ladder, I had less and less control of my time, right? Because the higher you go in these big organizations, you at a certain point, you don't even manage your own calendar. It's like it's all managed for you 100%. And I realized that my time and being able to have my time, like remember I told you what happened with my son's 3rd birthday. There was that moment after that, I was like, I just want to stay where I am. I want to be really, really good at the role that I'm in and help other people that really want to continue to move up the ladder. I maximized my amount of time. I also continued to provide positive results to the organization. And because of that, well, I just kind of found my sweet spot. I will tell you that a lot of the leadership and the sales and the solution like focus that I had with clients in my big corporate role, that definitely helps me today because it's a similar type of skill set, right? This is another one of the reasons that I think my corporate experience was something that really helped me then. And it continues to help me today because I don't know how many, I think what is the Gladwell book that says you have to do 10,000 hours to become an expert? Well, I did a lot more than 10,000 hours in 26 years in these types of roles, right? And so those skill sets that I learned in corporate, I'm still using them today to help connect with people, to solve problems, to also bring on new team members, create the environment for them that is the right environment so that they excel in what they do best. And so, yeah, I mean, I see that corporate experience and the skills that were transferable and how it's also helping me today.
Sales is such a fantastic background for what we do in the multifamily space. I think it's a fantastic background for just about anything. When you are involved in a situation where you're identifying needs or wants that somebody has, and you're presenting solutions and options and ways of fulfilling those needs and wants, like that is that if you have that skill and that ability to bring solutions to people that are meaningful and valuable, man, there's so many different paths you can take that skill set's going to apply well to. And certainly the multifamily space is, I mean, this is what I've been doing full time now for better part of 5 years and just multifamily, and it's sales all the time, Billy. Like, it's really, whether you're talking to brokers and selling yourself and selling your team, or you're talking to investors and selling a deal opportunity. If you're talking to your property managers about and just selling them on an idea or a concept that is going to improve things, like the more masterful you are at languaging and presenting solutions in such a way that it's easy for people to get their heads around. Because remember, a confused mind says no. So you want to make things simple and understandable. And really, like a coaching friend of mine uses the analogy of be like, you take somebody up the slide at the park and you pour olive oil all down the slide and you make it super easy for them. And then you just give them a little tiny push, which is the close, right? And they go for the slide. And that's really what it is. It's paving the way to bring win-win solutions, ideally, to the table for people that need your services or your products. And it sounds to me, Billy, like really the better part of 2 decades, you were really more in an ownership kind of role in the sense that you were your own, running your own show. You had your own clients, you had your own team, you had your territories, et cetera. And it doesn't surprise me that translates really well to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely one of those things that helps, and sometimes sales can get a bad rap, right? Easily, because they're like, yeah, you're always trying to pressure me, you're trying to do this thing. And number one, I usually say, as I'm helping to solve a problem, I'm always focused on how can I help a client make an informed decision, right? Because if someone's making an informed decision, then that way they're moving forward or moving backward on their own volition, right? Then they're saying, hey, look, I like what you're doing. I don't like what you're doing. But if you can help to create that informed decision atmosphere, then at the end of the day, that person is going to respect you more. I mean, this happened a lot in my corporate life. The same thing happens today in what we're doing. That's one thing, right? Helping people to identify their needs, their wants, their desires, and then also helping them to make an informed decision is one thing. There's also the other thing that a lot of people, and you know this, Tate, that a lot of people don't necessarily talk about, which is when you are in the type of role that is based on results, because we're focused on outcomes. Nobody ever asked me if I had worked on a deal for 5 hours or 5,000 hours. They asked, did you close this deal and how many, millions or tens of millions was it, right? That's what people wanted to know. Did you orchestrate the team? Were you able to talk to the executives on the other side, and we're able to bring that together. What very few people talk about also, Tate, is there's also a lot of pressure, because if you're not able to perform and you don't bring revenue into a company, then guess what? All of the other types of roles that don't generate revenue are also going to have challenges in being able to stay there, because no money comes into the company. We can't pay for any of the other roles that are there to support us. So I think it's also important during that time period that I was in a quote unquote sales type of role or sales leadership role, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that as well, right? It's not just always the easy thing and the client facing stuff. People talk about that a lot, but there's a lot of responsibility that goes along with it as well, because you carry an entire organization and their ability to function, right? Every single day that you go in and visit new clients and help them solve and identify their problems.
Yeah. Well, and so that's a good segue, because there's an awful lot of responsibility in owning multifamily real estate, and essentially being the owner of property that serves people either well or not well. And with at Greenlight, for instance, we have about 595 doors under management, and to me, that's 595 individuals or families whose well-being and safety and health are all directly related to the kind of job that I do as an owner and an operator. And while I don't feel necessarily a huge amount of pressure from that, I do feel a tremendous amount of responsibility. Yeah. And the only reason I don't feel pressure is because we're kind of on it. Like we're all over the asset management piece, and we've got great property managers, and we're doing really good things and physically improving the properties and building community. And if we weren't doing those things, I would feel a lot of pressure to be doing it. So I can get that. Let me ask you, I want to ask you about kind of how, your path in real estate and how you got started there and first deals. But before I do that, what has life been like for you in that 9 months since you left the W-2?
I play a lot more video games with my kids because they like doing that. It's something that I did not do before because I was always busy doing other stuff. I didn't see the value in sitting around playing video games. I did a lot of that in college, by the way. I played a lot of video games in college. It was a lot of fun. But what I found, Tate, is being able to have those moments when my kids want to have the moments. That's like, it's very different, because it's like, it doesn't have to be when daddy wants to get time together. It's when the kids want time together. And so one of the things that they enjoy doing, because they like NBA basketball and stuff like that. So we've been playing more video games. Seems very simple. Also, there are other things that I've been doing, like yesterday was a Monday. My wife and I went and had a massage in the middle of the day. Nice. That was fun because it's investing quality time together. Now, every day is not like that, right? Those are the positive things. I was able to fly to the US 2 weeks ago. I went and spent 5 days hanging out with my dad. We were closing new business opportunities as well. And I got to combine, like, it was at the end of the month of, it was the end of a quarter. So it was like end of a September. And those are things that I would have never done before. So I'm really focused on being able to invest my time in the way that gives me and my family, the people I love the most benefit, right? Those are the positive things. There's also things that, it was difficult when I left the corporate world as well, because when I left corporate, like, I felt like the world revolved around me. I was in the top talent program. I was one of the people that was able to, bring people together and assemble consensus and build consensus and be able to do these types of things. My phone was ringing all day. Everybody called me. They needed to ask Billy's input, and do we do this? And how do we get this escalation done? And there was this void when I left, and I realized, hey man, the machine keeps moving. It doesn't stop because I left. And so there was a part of me that thought, wow, I'm only one of 110,000 people. That big machine kept on moving. I kept checking my phone every 30 seconds to see how many people were going to call and what was that? What did I need to action? And so there was this sense of void that I've also had to go through to recognize, like, that was the old life. Like, that's not the life that I'm living now. And it hasn't been super easy, right? Because I did that for 26 years. And so, it's always about how am I finding the balance and really focusing time and energy and investing it where it makes the most sense, and also being realistic. Like, hey, look, man, there's these moments that are not so easy because I was used to doing certain things in a certain way for many, many years. And I work now just on recognizing where I am in the process and making the most out of every single day. Every day is not perfect. Every day is not a massage at the end of the day or in the middle of the day or the beginning of the day. But it's how do I make the most of each moment that I'm given. And right now, I mean, it's been a really, really good ride overall. And I'm really looking forward to owning more of my time, even recognizing that, 5 hours of silence and deep work is absolutely acceptable. You don't always have to be in the thick of it, which is what I was used to doing all the time. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit about kind of where I am, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess, since leaving corporate. Gotcha.
Let's rewind your first deal in the multifamily space, roughly 10 years ago, it sounds like. How did you find it? How did you structure it? Where is it? Who did you do it with? All that stuff.
Yeah. So my very first multifamily, this is a small multifamily. So I'll tell you, it's really interesting. I read all these books and I was the theoretical guru that we talked about before. And I was ready to make the purchase of the assets here, but none of them penciled out. Tate, I was looking for cash flow. I was looking for tax benefits. And I was looking for some appreciation on the back end. Like those were the basic thesis. I couldn't find cash flow. Everything I looked at here locally in Barcelona penciled out as negative cash flow. Like I had to pay 50 euros or 100 euro, like just call it dollars, $50, $100 a month to keep the property. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I wasn't getting the same type of tax benefits. So I was like, I looked in the US. Now, let me just say this. The way that I did it was not the way that I now help other people do it. I did it the wrong way. Probably very similar to you, right? The reason that you get to be good is because you were really bad. And in the very beginning, just to give you an idea, Tate, I was in this thing. I just needed to take action. I knew I had money in the bank and I did not want to rely on Wall Street anymore. So I was like determined to buy something. Mm-hmm. So the money in the bank, and the way that I thought about it was, okay, well, I just want to purchase a property just if something goes wrong. I thought about it if before, but the reality is when something goes wrong, I wanted to have family members that were somewhat close, right? A couple hours away. So that was that's how I selected the location. Some people call it the market. I selected the location that way. Yeah. Not a very good way to select the location, right? I didn't look at any of were more people moving there than were leaving? What kind of jobs were there? How stable were they? Any of that I didn't look at any of that stuff. But eventually I took action on imperfect information. Yeah. And I bought my very first multifamily property because it was within distance of family members being able to get there and because I could afford it. Mm-hmm. That was it. That was literally it. The challenge was I had this new asset in my portfolio. It was it was working well. It was producing cash flow. I was getting some tax benefits. The challenge is that for me at the time was I started getting phone calls or emails because the residents that were in the property, they were having problems, Tate. And guess what I didn't have? I didn't have a team. I didn't have processes in place. I didn't have any of that stuff. So I had to learn on the fly, like, hey, listen, I'm a guy who was living in Spain. I didn't have a team locally. So we had to get like an answering service. And then we had to get a handyman. And then we had to do things, well, the way that I knew how to do, because even though theoretically I knew all this stuff, I didn't have the practical knowledge. And so I did everything completely the wrong way, which is now what I'm helping people to do the right way, which is number one, before you buy any kind of apartment or enter into any kind of investment, is be crystal clear on the benefit that I'm looking for, right? So now every time before I place my investment dollars, I know what I'm looking to get out of the investment. Is it more time? Is it return on capital? Is it tax benefits? What is it exactly? Then from there, it's to go to the location where you have the highest probability of getting that result, right? So if I'm looking for cash flow kind of locations, I go to the locations that are going to give me the better opportunity to get cash flow. I'm probably not going to Los Angeles. I'm probably not going to New York with a multifamily deal. Then after that, and this is the most critical part, and this is one of the things you and I talked about on the Going Long podcast, right? Which is one of the things that you do masterfully well. It's how do you build the team? And you build the team members that have expertise on the location. And then from there, once you have what the benefit you're looking for personally, what the location is that gives you the highest probability of getting the benefit, and you've got the world-class team, afterwards, it doesn't matter if you buy a 2-unit apartment building, a 220-unit apartment building, as long as those first 3 things are in line with one another and your team understands the asset or the opportunity that you're going to purchase, everything else is kind of gravy. I will come back and just tell you one thing. That property that I purchased that I didn't know what I was doing, when I was done paying my mortgage, I was netting about $2,000. I was netting about $2,200 a month on the very first property, which was a small duplex. And so what that did for me was it really helped me to recognize that even though I didn't do things properly, I did purchase the asset properly. Right. And so I held it over time. And the fact that I held it over time was one of the things that allowed me to recognize, hey, listen, this was not the best purchase in the world. I learned a lot. And as a result of holding it over time, I learned. And it's one of the things that motivated me to continue to do and purchase more, multifamily, small multifamilies. And then I bought a mobile home park, which was pretty awesome. And then decided that it was also time to invest with other people, leverage their expertise, very similar to how you help other people who are high paid, busy professionals like I was. I started recognizing I'm making a lot of money in my day job in the bonus checks. So why don't I continue to bring these assets in that I'll manage directly, but also leverage the expertise of other people? And, I'll give them $200,000 or $300,000. They do all the work. I get a benefit, not the same benefit as the assets that I own directly. But hey, it was still a pretty good benefit, and it was much better than playing in the Wall Street casino, because at least investing in Main Street with the operator and syndicators, that made a lot of sense. It was, it was a thing that I decided to do more and more of it. Yeah.
So, what kind of deals are you doing now? What I know that you're, just from talking to you, that you invest a fair amount passively now in other people's deals.
Yep.
When you do that, how do you go about, selecting the operator and selecting the project?
Yeah, so it goes back very similar to what we were talking about before. Like, what is the benefit that I'm looking for? Where's the location? And as I start to meet the team, I'm typically looking for, what has this team done in the space that I'm particularly looking for them to do? Yeah. I also like to know, kind of what are the contingency plans? I like to know the bad things that have happened, right? Because if everything is perfect, then all right, I never have been to a place by having all the stoplights be green. Normally there's 1 or 2 that are red along the way. And so I want to know what happens when the light is red, not when they're all green. Yeah. I typically like to speak to somebody who's invested with that person before, if we get further along in that process. Where I can, I like to understand how they're explaining. I like to know if people are spending time with me or not. I'm someone who appreciates a high touch. This is just me, right? Some people just like to send a check. I don't like to do that. I like to actually meet the syndication team. Don't always meet the person who's leading the syndication, but who are the members of the team? Are they helping me to understand this particular investment opportunity in the way that makes sense to me? Not that they're just explaining it like they explain it to every single person that watches the PowerPoint slide. And so these are some of the things I look for, track record, experience when things don't work well. I like to know if they're also going to talk about the things that make people uncomfortable. Like, hey, what happens if someone, is not here tomorrow? Like, then what happens? But also too, these are things that I've learned to be much more comfortable with, because, depending on the amount of capital that you're placing, I think it gives you the ability to ask certain questions. I think no matter what you do, if you're looking to place capital in any type of deal, you have the opportunity to ask any questions that you need. I think if you can't ask questions, or you don't feel that you can ask questions, then, or come back to me, right? Then I'm not making an informed decision. Yeah. And so if I'm not making an informed decision, then I'm not doing myself or the syndicator any good, in my opinion.
Yeah. You mentioned that you help people invest now. I'm sure that you're a great mentor and teacher. How do you do that? Do you have like formal coaching, or what? How do you extend your services that way?
Yeah, I don't actually have a formal coaching program or anything like that. One of the things that I do though, and with like our investor family, right? The people that invest with us typically are investing with us. And we do a very specific thing for accredited investors that are looking to generate consistent future returns, as well as help to keep more on their active income, not passive income, but active income and income tax. So we do something very, very specific there. But what I like to do is for the people that are part of our investor family, I like to understand what it is that they want to do aside from being able to invest their capital with us, but also what is it the things that they are typically wanting to learn how to do. And I like to invest time with our investor family first and foremost. Like I got a WhatsApp earlier from one of our investor family members that wants to talk about something related to sales. Mm-hmm. Well, because this particular individual is starting a new role, and we talk about family, we talk about lives and what they're doing. And our investor family members will come to me to ask about things that I've done in my previous 26-year career. Now that I've left corporate, there are different things that I can also talk about, like things that you and I are talking about now. And it's not a formal program, but it's something that it's another way that I like to add value to those that have entrusted their time and their capital with us through the investments. And so that's probably the thing that I do the most. And usually we're working with a very small group of people because we work with a very particular type of client. But also too, if there are people that I've worked with in my past that have questions that they want to know, or they're looking to get into real estate or real asset investing, I do like to invest time with them as well. I have a lot less time now because it seems like I'm getting a lot more requests. So maybe to your point, I may need to figure out how to like formally put that together. But yeah, those are the things that I do so far to be able to give back and help to coach other people. But I focus a lot on our existing investor family members first, and then kind of go from there.
I love how you call them investor family. I love that. I jotted that down as a matter of fact, and to refer to your investors as family and to be there for them as family, that's powerful. I've actually never heard anyone kind of relate to their investor base that way. So that's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I do. As I spend days thinking about okay, how are we going to do this, and you spend a number of conversations, and you're investing your time to get to know someone and know more about their family and their life and why they're making an investment, right? I believe that one of the manifestations of investing with someone, investing your capital, is that they help to represent the things that you want to be able to accomplish. I know that's one of the things that I do. And so when I'm entrusted with someone else's goals, their dreams, part of what they want to achieve for their family, I think of it just like myself. And so that is, to me, it's an investor family member, right? And as I start to learn more about them, and we can talk about things that are not necessarily related to the investment and how it's doing, but more about their lives. Yeah, I consider them definitely to be investor family members, and we talk about a lot of different things. So yeah,
so great, dude. We are very unfortunately, out of time here.
Oh no!
I hate
it.
Have to
do it again.
I hate it. We'll have to do it again real soon. Maybe we'll do episodes part 1 and part 2 here.
That'll work.
But for a couple of things. So, what is the best way for investors, passive or active, to reach out to you and learn more about you?
Yeah, the one thing that I would say is, especially if you're someone who is like I was, like a high paid accredited investor, first generation accredited investor, because I didn't grow up learning about money. I've learned a lot more about money and wealth since then. One of the things that we've also helped people to do, especially those people that the accredited investor who's looking to generate generate returns, investing passively, and also being able to keep more of their earned income tax. We've helped, and we created this really unique guide. And the person can go to firstgencp.com/paylesstax, and it will talk about some of the things that we're doing today to serve accredited investors. That's one way. I think there's another way, which is, connecting on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. Tate, you know that. I would just say, hey, listen, when you connect on LinkedIn, just let me know that you've also listened to Tate and I here on the Apartment Gurus podcast, because it just helps the conversation go much, much easier. And the Going Long podcast. I mean, you're an amazing guest, so definitely check us out over there. But specifically those people that are credit investors, go to firstgencp.com/paylesstax.
Highly recommend Going Long podcast with Billy Keels. He's a fantastic host. As his guest, I felt very comfortable and very. It was just a very stimulating conversation, and really got a lot out of it myself. And so I think listeners would benefit huge from listening to Billy and learning so much more than what we've been able to cover here today. I mean, Billy's just a wealth of experience and information and knowledge. And okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. I don't have the final 5 questions or anything like that, but just in general, kind of bringing this full circle, you kind of know the listeners here. We're basically all investors, either passive or active, that are looking to level up in the multifamily space. Any final kind of thoughts or words of wisdom for us?
Well, here's the thing, Tate. I would say if someone is already watching, listening, you're already taking action.
Yeah.
You are already part of the 1%, because most people are not even wanting to get education. You're investing time week after week, episode after episode, listening to Tate and the guests that he has here. So you're already part of the 1%.
Yeah.
You know what? It doesn't cost any more to start to take some of the concepts and put them into practice, right? You're never going to get, and I think we've already mentioned this one, you're not going to get things right the first time usually. But the idea is, how can you get the education, what you're doing now? How can you start to take action and have the support system? And I know, Tate, this is one of the things that you offer. You're a coach. You're helping people to move forward faster. So it's just a part of the process, right? Get the education, take action, and then be able to start to get the results. The only way that you can change your current situation or start to get new results is take different actions, right? So maybe you've been listening for a while, maybe you've been watching for a while, and you just still haven't taken that action. Well, you know what? Take the action. That's the thing. That's what will start. Don't be like I was and be this theoretical mastermind, but not actually getting into a point where you're actually seeing results. Once I started taking action, less than a decade later, I'm already out of a world, which was the corporate world, which I liked, which I enjoyed, but now I'm living life on my own terms. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been perfect. At the same time, I got to a point where my 9 to 5 was optional, and it's about continuing to take action. So that's the thing that I would say. I mean, you're already here. You've already done the hard part because you're back here, episode after episode, listening to Tate, listening to the guests, and just keep taking action, or start taking action if you haven't already. So that would be the only thing, Tate, that I think I would add, or just maybe talk about as well. So it's been really awesome talking to you, man. You make this easy, man. Thank you so much.
It's so fun. I love doing your podcast, and I loved having you here today, and just very, very grateful for all the value that you brought and the wisdom that you dropped today. We definitely have to do another episode here real soon and get into some more nitty gritty around deals and that sort of thing. But I'm really, really excited for you and your new life, your lifestyle by design, right? Like, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful to see you succeed at that level, and to, like in your words, to make that 9 to 5 optional, to spend 10 years doing that, and now to be able to enjoy the fruits of it. I'm so happy for you, man.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Tate. Thanks so much. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to share just a bit of my story with you and your audience. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, we thank you. And listeners, Billy said it best, man. You're already doing it. Like, you're already part of the 1%. You're already, you're listening to the very end of this episode here. And that shows a commitment. It shows an engagement, and it shows a drive that, all 3 of those ingredients, Billy and I both know, are what it takes to succeed. And so you're on your way. And so give yourself a pat on the back right now, and feel good about what you're doing. Whether you've done 10 deals, or you've done no deals, or you've done 2 deals, it's it's all good. And we're all where we are. And this is our starting point right now, here and now. And we get to create our future moving forward like Billy's done. So Billy, thanks again. Listeners, thank you again. Love you guys. And we'll see you on the next episode of The Apartment Gurus. Take care, everybody.
This has been The Apartment Gurus with Tate Siemer. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. To contact Tate, go to www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. He loves to hear from you and thanks you for being a valued listener. Just a reminder that you are the guru. See you on the next episode of The Apartment Gurus.